قرآني نبض حياتي، قرآني طهر ذاتي، قرآني عصمة أمري، قرآني طوق نجاتي. قرآني نبض حياتي، قرآني طهر ذاتي، قرآني.
I want to just talk, not for very long, but about things that are very important and relate to us, right? And I want to break our talk up into 3 parts. Okay, the first part I want to talk a little bit about dawah. Now I know you all know a lot about dawah, but just a few small points that we can remember for when we're giving dawah. That will be the first one. And then also I don't know if you're mind, if I ask your questions and you're interactive, make it interactive. So otherwise, you know what's going to happen, you fall off to sleep and then, So we'll talk a little bit about dawah, and then we're going to talk about modern ideologies. Because you see, the IPCI, we do dawah, but we also defend Islam, because especially in today's time, there's so many people trying to attack Islam, so many people saying about this and that and this and that. So just as we have to give dawah, we also defend Islam. And in the time of Sheikh Ahmed did that, he was defending Islam against what? Christianity mostly, but also other things he spoke about as well. In today's time, what's the biggest threat for us as Muslims? Atheism, people trying to change the religion, people speaking against the Quran and Hadith. There's all new challenges that have come in the last 100 years that we have to be ready for now. That's our job as Muslims. We have to be ready for it. We have to have the answers. Not my sheikh or this, or every one of us, we must have the answers. When the person asks us the question, yes, I know the answer. Why? Because I took some time and I studied it. So we're going to talk about these modern ideologies, and we're only going to talk about 2. We're going to talk about atheism, people who say, I believe in science, I don't believe in God. I believe in science. And that was something that happened in Europe, but now in our own universities in KwaZulu-Natal, I found many people saying that. I don't believe in God, I believe in science. So we're going to talk about that. And then after that, the last topic we're going to talk about is what's known in the West as feminism. So feminism now is, we're going to talk a lot about that, where they try and make the man and the woman be exactly the same. Exactly the same, but they're different. We all know that. But they try and make them exactly the same. So we're going to talk about how do we answer those things, how do we show that this ideology is wrong, what's the Islamic perspective on all of these things. Alright, so you understand that, you're ready for that?
Yes.
It's interesting topics?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. How do you spread Islam? You give dawah, right? So if you read the seerah of our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you can look at, many times we've read the seerah, we've heard the seerah, we attended lectures, but there's a certain way you can look at the seerah. If you look at the seerah, it can be a step-by-step guide of how to transform a Muslim minority country into an Islamic state, into a perfect Islamic state. That's what the seerah is. It's a step-by-step guide, because Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam changed the entire landscape. Imagine in 23 years, when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam started giving dawah, there was no Muslims. 23 years later, the whole peninsula, not one country, that in today's time that's about 5 or 6 countries, all of that was Muslim. In 23 years, tens of thousands of people changed their ideas. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sent the message of Islam to the Romans, to the Persians, to Egypt, with no social media, no technology. Right? So this dawah that we have to do, when we say dawah, don't think about it like just me going to speak to someone. That's a small form of dawah. When I'm talking, I'm calling the person. Dawah is a broad initiative, it's a broad collective to change the world from non-Muslim to Muslim. And we can play a part, whether we are giving the dawah, whether we are helping with admin, whether we are helping financially. All of us can help the dawah in some way or another, whatever it is. Even if there's a function and maybe we're making some of the stuff to eat at the function, that's also helping in the dawah. So every single one of us has to play a role somewhere in the dawah. We need people to give dawah also. We need ladies to give dawah, very, very, very important. But some people say, maybe I can't speak, I'm not good at talking, I don't know what to say. So you can do other things to help the dawah. But every single one of us needs to have it on our agenda, that we want Islam to go back to where it was in the top. is dominant in the world. Because you see now, as long as we live, as long as our parents have lived, as long as our grandparents have lived, we've only seen Islam and the Muslims being subjugated, being oppressed in the world, right? So we think in our minds, subconsciously what we think, this is how it always was. Because that's all we saw, that's all our parents saw, that's all our grandparents. So we think that, even though we know it's not true, but that's what comes into our life. So we have to remind ourselves that for the last 1,400 years, for 80 to 85% of that 1,200 years of the 1,400, Muslims were a superpower in the world. Muslims had a say in whether justice will occur or not. Muslims could enact justice in the world. So what is happening today in Palestine could not happen at that time because there were people in power who could go and stop it. You understand? So we should understand that that's where Islam was for most of the time. The time we're living in today is not normal. It's an anomaly, they call it. It's something that we should try and we should be always working. How are we going to get out of this? How are we going to go back to the top? How are we going to make Islam dominant again? So that is one of your core goals when you're giving da'wah. There's many other goals. When you're giving da'wah, you want to save that person from going to the fire, of course. That's also a goal. But we mustn't lose sight of this broad objective of da'wah. Now, you know, I was telling you that the seerah is a step-by-step guide of how to do da'wah, right? But sometimes when we read the seerah, we actually erase the da'wah from it. How we do that, I'll just give you an example. Anyone here knows the story of the hijrah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam from Makkah to Medina? You definitely read about the story. So before the hijrah, what happened? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was going to the Hajj fairs. It was when it was time for Hajj, all of the people from the Arabian Peninsula used to come and they used to have certain fairs. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to go there and give da'wah to the people. Most of them were rejecting him, and then he met the Ansar of Medina. And those Ansar of Medina said, no, we will not only will we accept Islam, we want you to come to Medina Munawwara. Alright? And then the next year, 12 of them came, and then the next year, 72 of them came. And then a year later, now Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam makes the hijrah. So we talk about that, we call it Aqaba Ula, Aqaba Thani, where they took the pledge with Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And then we fast forward to when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam comes to Medina, everyone singing Tala al-Badru alayna, and everyone is welcoming Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But we leave out the fact that when they met Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam first, no one in Medina was Muslim. But when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came there 1 year later, most of the people were Muslim. So how that happened? How it happened was Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who can tell me, anyone knows? Because before the hijrah, Medina Munawwara was non-Muslim. But at the time of the hijrah, most of the people were Muslim, they were all welcoming Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So how did that happen?
Those 12 made dawah.
Very good.
72 made dawah.
Those 12 made dawah, that's how it became 72. But Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also sent Mus'ab bin Umayr. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sent Abdullah bin Maktoum. Two Sahaba. They went there to this foreign land, two of them coming there. And they changed most of the land in that 1 year before Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came. So can you imagine how well trained they were in dawah? Can you imagine how they knew dawah? Because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught them. And the story of them giving dawah is in all of our classical seerah works. But sometimes when we're telling the seerah, we forget this point. We don't think about that. We talk a lot about the hijrah, but what a key, if that dawah didn't take place, who would be there to welcome Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when he came? You know? So it's a core component of the seerah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which we must always be cognizant of. We must always remember and keep it in mind. So inshallah, I don't want to talk too much about this because we know it's important, but I want us all to make a firm intention that we're going to do da'wah whenever we can. We're going to call whoever we meet that's a non-Muslim, give them a pamphlet, tell them something nice, be good, just be good to them sometimes if you can't tell them anything at that point. But we have to give some form of da'wah. Because you see, let me explain to you something just from a mathematical perspective, right? See here at IPCI, we got our branch here in town. We got 8 other branches around South Africa, mostly in KZN. Now, Alhamdulillah, every day in the branch, someone will accept Islam. Inshallah, Alhamdulillah. That's good, right? But, it sounds good, but think about it. That means in 1 year, only 365 people accepted Islam. How many people are in this country of South Africa? 60 million people. So how are 1 organization, 2 organizations, 3 organizations going to reach the whole country? It can't happen. Until and unless every Muslim says, it's my responsibility also. Yes, the Dawah organizations can help me. If I've got a question, they can help me. If I need literature, they can help me. But it's my responsibility. In this year, at least one person, I'm going to give them Dawah, and inshallah they will come to Islam, and inshallah I'll teach them everything about Islam. If every one person says, this is my responsibility for the upcoming year, you'll see a change in the country in 5-10 years. There'll be a massive change, if that really is the case. So the reality is, and I know all of you are here, how many from South Africa here? The rest from Swaziland? Zambia. So you're all different countries. We got different, like, on the ground, the demographics and the stuff is different. But the reality in all of these countries is that Islam is a minority, right? And if the Muslims work together, Islam can become a majority. That's all we need to know. We don't need to know more than that, because there's a common factor in all of these countries. So inshallah, that's all I want to say about this topic. But I just want every one of you here, because every one of us here, we can make it our responsibility to give dawah, and we can influence the Muslims around us, because every one of us knows so many Muslims. We can influence those close to us to also start giving dawah. And then when everyone starts, then you'll see now, inshallah, you'll see a massive difference in the place we're living in and in the numbers of people that come to Islam. So we all make that initiative, inshallah, make firm resolution that we're going to give dawah, and we're going to make other people give dawah also, or call them to give dawah. Inshallah. Okay. So that's all I want to say on dawah, because that's easy. We know we're there, we're on the same page, everything's good. Now let's go on to the little bit more complicated topics now, and that is modern ideologies. Okay. So now follow me, right? We are currently in the 21st century, right? In the 17th and 18th century, right? So 300, 400 years ago, in Europe. Now we're only talking about Europe for now, right? Why are we talking about Europe? Because Europe was that country which that continent which the countries came and colonized most of the world. So they spread their ideologies. All the countries we're in was colonized by some European country. We were colonized by the Dutch, then the British, and so on and so forth in the different countries, right? So what happened 300 and 400 years ago in Europe was that the dominant religion there was what? In Europe? Christianity, right? So Christianity was the dominant religion. But in those centuries, 17th and 18th centuries, science was advancing. So people were making lots of discoveries, medicine was, advancing, all of these things were happening. And people were realizing that, hey, lots of the things in the Bible is incorrect. This is a mistake in the Bible. This is wrong in the Bible. So people then began to say, no, in the West, we need to rid ourselves of religion. We can't, because there's mistakes in the Bible. So what they did was, they made a big mistake. They conflated or they confused Christianity with religion as a whole. So because they saw science is showing that Christianity is wrong, science is showing that Christianity is wrong, so they made a shift away now from religion, and now they needed something to fulfill that purpose, because religion serves a purpose. It tells you what's right, it tells you what's wrong, it tells you all of these things. And so now they try to move to other ideologies that can tell you what's right and wrong, using science, using their own logic, but leaving revelation out of it completely. So they did that. And this period, what they call it, anyone knows what this period is called? It's very difficult, anyone knows? This period in history, although it's the period with the most darkness, the worst things happen here, but they call it the Enlightenment. The period where, then the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. They call it the area where the period where they got hidayat, light came to them. Where in reality, it was the opposite of that. So, and this is a theme that we're going to see. A lot of these modern ideologies, they say one thing, they call it the Enlightenment. When you really look at what happened under the surface, it's not an enlightenment, it's putting you more into darkness. So there's a lot of phrases, like, slogans that are used, we're going to see for feminism also, and atheism. It sounds nice at first, but when you look under the surface, you realize there's something completely wrong here. It doesn't make sense, that's not how it's supposed to be, right? I just want to tell you a joke. Please laugh, okay, even if you don't find it funny. Right? So, but this joke relates to what we're going to be talking about in a way. So it's a story now about a farmer. He has a farm, he got animals on the farm, But this farmer is very angry and ill-tempered. So every day he overworks the donkey, he hits the donkey, he gives it only a little bit of water, a little bit of food, doesn't treat it properly, finishes it up. But every day the donkey gets up and he's working and he's working and he listens and he doesn't say anything. He listens to the farmer. Even though the farmer was whipping him, not feeding him, treating him badly, he still carries on every day. He doesn't try to escape. Sometimes if the door is open, he won't escape, he'll stay there. So one day the other animals asked him, Dad, see, you're getting treated so badly here. You're getting whipped around here. You're not getting food properly. What's making you stay here with this farmer who's abusing you like this? Why are you staying here? Run away, make an escape, jump over the fence and go. So he said, no, I know I'm being abused here. I understand that. But you see, you don't know something that I know. One day, when I was doing some work in the night, I was in my stable, I was just sitting in my stable, I heard the farmer was talking to his daughter. And the farmer told his daughter that, you know, if you carry on disobeying me, I'm going to get you married to that donkey. So the donkey said, oh, okay, so this is going to happen to me. So he said, I'll stay here and I'll do this, right? So it's a joke, but it's just to show you that in this case, how deep a false promise can be. A false sense of hope that you can get from something that wants to destroy you, but can give you hopes that it wants good for you. And this is the core of all these modern ideologies. It comes across as though it's what's best for you, but in reality it's what's worst for you. Understand that? So you understand how the story also links, right? So we must try not to be like that donkey, right? That farmer is talking to that daughter, he's telling something that has got nothing to do with us, right? A lot of these modern ideologies, they got nothing to do with Islam. As you saw now with the Enlightenment, it was something against Christianity. Those scientific advancements, they couldn't show any mistakes in the Quran because there's no mistakes in the Quran. So it's a Christian problem, it's got nothing to do with us. So we shouldn't now think that that has anything to do with us as Muslims, understand? Where we're coming from now with this whole thing, right? So in today's time, or in the last 20, 30 years, one of the biggest causes for people leaving Islam, Allah protect us, is that they go into something called atheism or agnosticism. So they say, no, you know what, we don't believe in religion, we don't believe in God, we don't believe in all of these things, na'udhu we just believe in science, right? And only whatever science tells us, we'll accept that, otherwise we won't accept it. This is a sort of ideology that you find prevalent in universities and other places like that, where they say, no, Allah protect us. They say religion is just fairy tales, this, that. That's how they view it, right? So for us, the best thing we can do, now we can get into the whole technical discussion about religion and the history and all of this here and science and whether science is true, but it's going to be a bit much for us to learn, right? The easiest way and the best way you can combat these things is if you learn the miracles of the Quran and the miracles of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If you know those miracles like the back of your hand, you know it properly, then anyone who comes to you and says, no, religion is a fairy tale, religion is science, you show him these miracles in the Quran, or her these miracles in the Quran, and then it's done. And I've tried this out practically in universities, and alhamdulillah it worked. So I didn't now start talking to them about science or this or that or whatever it is. I just said, okay, see here, this is what's in the Quran. Can you explain to me with your science how this is in the Quran? I'm going to give you examples of that now, right? So when you did that and they said, wait man, how can this be written 1,400 years ago if it's saying something that's happening today? Or how can Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam say that if it's not possible? And when they realize that there's no scientific explanation for it, then what happens? They have to accept Islam after that. Although some of them say, so the one guy, I showed him a prophecy of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, miracle. I showed him a miracle of Quran. So the first one he said, no, it was a fluke. Then the second one I showed him. Then I showed him the third one. Then he said, okay, but how do we know the whole world is real? What if it's all a dream? So he didn't want to. Now some people, you can take the horse to the water, you can't make it drink, right? So you took him right there, but he's not ready to accept. So he says, well, what if this whole world is a dream anyway? Who cares, right? Because there was no answer after that. But the point I'm making is that if you learn these 3 or 4 prophecies, or what we say miracles of the Quran, it's very, very, very powerful for these types of people. Now I must just tell you one other thing. Most people you meet are not like this, especially here where we live, mashallah, in South Africa. Most people here, they they know God in some way or the other, they believe in God, they love God. So this sort of thing again is more prevalent in the West and the universities here and in other places where the people say, I only believe in science. But those are the people who make the biggest objections against Islam. So we must know how to answer them. But for your average dawah, when you're talking to a normal person, an ordinary person, you don't really need all of these things. Because people are attracted to Islam because of different things. Some people are attracted to Islam because the laws are so beautiful. Some people are attracted to Islam because Nabi Sallam's character is so beautiful. Some people are attracted to Islam for ajib things. Maybe just like, sometimes obviously because of the Tawheed, it makes so much of sense. Sometimes it's for the miracles. Sometimes it's for the beauty of the Quran. Everyone is different. So you shouldn't have a thing to say like, no, I'm going to use this and this one thing and people must accept Islam because of this here. Because you'll be surprised at what attracts people to Islam. Sometimes people who accepted Islam are reverse, they tell us, no, the modesty that the woman has, that's what attracted us to Islam. So there's a whole host of different things that we can use to show the beauty of Islam, right? But now when you get that one stubborn person who says, no, I believe in science, science can explain everything, then now you use these prophecies specifically for that person. Okay, so I'm going to just mention 3 miracles of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the Quran. And inshallah, if we use these 3, it will be very, very effective. So the first one I use, it's a very, very ajib one, right? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the hadith, he said, La taqumu as-sa'a. The day of judgment will not come, right? And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam listed a few things, 1, 2, 3. And then the last thing he said was, Hatta ta'uda ardul arabi murujan wa anhara. The day of judgment will not come until the Arabian Peninsula, Saudi Arabia, those lands, right? Until those lands return to being a forest with rivers and meadows and things like that. So now it was a desert. Saudi Arabia was a desert at that time. It still is for the most part a desert, right? But Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is telling us what? In the future it's going to become a forest with rivers. And also Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is telling us that it was like that in the past, because he said it will return to being like that. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said what? In the past, Arabia was a forest with rivers. In the future, it will be like that also. Now, someone will say, okay, but how can you prove that? If you just go to Google and you type there, cyclical deserts, Arabia. Just type that into Google, right? You will see the first article that comes up will tell you what? That when scientists archaeologists dug down in the Arabian Peninsula, they realized that Saudi Arabia is a cyclical desert. Cyclical meaning cycle. So it cycles from being a forest to a desert to a forest over tens of thousands of years. They realized that now in the last 30 or 40 years. But Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that when? 1,400 years ago. So how can it be possible? Like, you ask the person, how can it be possible that someone before any technology is telling you that Arabia is a cyclical desert? Now they just discovered it, and still most people don't know about it. So it's a very, very, very powerful prophecy. There's not many ways that a person can try and explain that. Like I said, when I told the person, he said, no, it's a fluke. One lucky shot or whatever it is, right? That's what they said. So that's one very powerful. Now, inshallah, I will send you all a list of these things. I'm just going over, so if you don't write it down, you don't remember it, it's fine. I'll send it to one of you all, I'll send it to Muhammad Khan and send it to you all. But it's important to just know this for this kind of encounter, right? Now the second one is also just as amazing, okay? So in the Quran, in Surah Dukhan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about Pharaoh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about how he chased Musa alayhi salam, the Red Sea split, and then they went through, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how the Red Sea closed in on Fir'aun and it drowned Fir'aun and his army, right? That's all in Surah Dukhan. Now after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about how Fir'aun died, he says, it's a very unique statement that's only found in one place in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَا بَكَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّمَاءُ وَالْأَرْضِ. The heavens and the earth did not cry for you. Or the heavens and the earth, may they not cry for you. So this is not found anywhere else in the Quran, this statement. Now, if you Google something called the Rhine Papyrus, you will see that recently, I think maybe in the last 20, 30 years, they discovered what the people would write when the pharaoh would die. So the ancient Egyptians, when their king died, they used to write, oh, we miss you so much, oh this, oh you were so great. It's called a eulogy, right? They would eulogize about the pharaoh. So they found the manuscripts or the actual documents of the eulogies that were written for that pharaoh, Ramses II. And on there, what do most of them say? They say, may the heavens and earth cry for you. May the heavens and earth cry for you. All of them are saying that. And what the Quran said? فَمَا بَكَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّمَاءُ وَالْأَرْضُ. The heavens and earth will not cry for you. So 1,400 years ago, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam knew, or Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala revealed to him, a verse that shows that he knew what was written in those things which were written 1,400 years before Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and they were only translated in the 1800s. In the 1800s, they translated ancient hieroglyphics. So there is no way of explaining how that verse could appear with that wording in the Quran. It's impossible, right? Now, one more. So another one that's helpful also is because if you meet Christians, what they'll tell you is, I know this is going on to Christianity, they'll tell you, the Quran copied from the Bible. That's what they say. They'll tell you that. So a very nice example to show that the Quran corrects the Bible, it doesn't copy from the Bible, and also it shows you a miracle of the Quran. This has to do with the usage of the word Fir'aun. Okay? So Fir'aun is what? When we say Fir'aun, what do we mean by that? Yeah, but what's a pharaoh?
It's a title.
It's the title, very good. It's a title of a king in Egypt. So it's not talking about a specific person. Anyone who's the king of Egypt, they used to call them pharaoh, right? But now this term pharaoh, and this you can Google and check out, only began to exist in the 15th century BCE, before the Common Era, right? Only in the 15th century BCE. Yusuf alayhi salam was before that, and Musa alayhi salam was after that. Following this. So Yusuf alayhi salam lived before the term pharaoh became popular, and Musa alayhi salam lived after the term became popular, right? But when you read the Bible, you'll see in the time of Joseph, they call him the king pharaoh. In the time of Moses, they call him the king pharaoh. But when you read the Quran, you see in the time of Musa alayhi salam, Ya Fir'aun, Fir'aun is used. But in the time of Yusuf alayhi salam, Fir'aun is not used. The word Malik, king, is used. So you can see there that the Quran didn't copy the Bible, it actually corrected the Bible, and it corrected it in such a way that today we can historically verify that the Quran was right and the Bible was wrong. You can historically verify this, right? So I don't know, I hope you'll follow that one. It's interesting. There's a lot more like that. There's a lot, trust me, there's a lot more like that, right? But we don't want to go too much into that. We just understand that basically, I don't know if anyone has any questions on this topic, atheism, or even Dawah, what we spoke about, before we go on to the last thing that I want to talk about, which is feminism, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth than this. Any questions? Yes?
Okay, it's not really relating to non-Muslims, but Muslims. There is a group of Muslims that say that they only follow the Quran, they don't follow the Sunnah and the Hadith.
Yes.
So how do you now maybe give dawah to those Muslims, or how do you, because there is a group like that.
So it's very, very important question. Actually, when we went to Cape Town last year, so there was a dentist there and another doctor, and they invited us. They said, no, you're in Cape Town, come visit us, whatever it is. So we went for tea there. And as we're going, we're having tea, whatever it is, they start bringing up things about the Quran now. And they say, no, we don't accept any hadith. So they only read, all their salah, they read 2 rakats only, because they don't accept any hadith. And they say, no, the shahada, the kalima, when we make someone take shahada, we say, ashhadu an la, they say, no, that's not the kalima. They got another one from a verse in the Quran. They say, no, you must say that, not this. So we got a bit of a shock now, because we realized this thing is spreading. Because these people, we knew them a long time ago, they weren't like this. So this ideology is spreading. Now, let me explain to you why it's spreading. It's spreading because of multiple reasons. Number one is that people don't have the requisite knowledge of how Quran and Hadith works. So these people don't know that the same transmission of the Quran, the way the Quran came to us, is the same as the way that most of the Hadith came to us. So if you undermine one, you automatically undermining the other, because the chains of narration are the same. So how are you gonna, they don't know that, right? And number two, what I find most leads to this is that when Christians come and they make an objection against a hadith, so now you don't know the answer to the hadith, it's difficult, you're not sure what to say, this, that. So what's the easiest thing to say? No, it's not authentic. Just put it on one side, right? Not authentic, not authentic, not authentic. And as you keep doing this, Christians come with this objection, that objection. No, not authentic, it's not like that. just said that. Then eventually now you end up in a situation where you're not accepting hadith. Why? Because you're bowing to the pressure of the questions that are coming from the Christians. So to answer your question, when you're giving dawah to people like this, there's two lines of reasoning that we use. The first is that we show from the Quran that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's actions and words are authoritative, they have authority. So there's a whole host of verses in the Quran where it says that لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ, that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his purpose, one of his purposes was to explain the Quran. So how are you going to understand your Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's explanation, right? And number two is that what I said, that the chains of narration for all the authentic ahadith are the same as the chains of narration for the Quran. You can examine both of them, right? So if you undermine one, you're undermining the other. Right? And then there's various other ways, those are two easy ways. There's various other ways now where you show certain things, because for them they'll say every law in the Sharia has to come from the Quran. That's what they say, right? So you can show them places where the Quran is talking about a previous law that the Muslims were following, but it's not found in the Quran. So example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاءُ مِنَ النَّاسِ مَا وَلَّاهُمْ عَنْ قِبْلَةٍ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about now you need to change your qibla from Baytul Maqdis to the Kaaba, right? So where was the command to face Baytul Maqdis in the first place? It's not found in the Quran. So why were the Muslims following it? Because the Nabi told them. You understand that? So you can show that the Quran is already telling you that the actions and the sayings of Nabi are authoritative, right? I understand that. Any other question before we move on?
My question is about the fact that since you guys are here, I'm sure you deal with a lot of people that are Zulus. And Zulus have like culture. How do you make that? Because the main problem we have when we deal with black people in South Africa, I'm sure in other countries as well, not just about Christianity. We got the culture, the ancestors,
yes,
you know,
yes.
and it's so embedded. Even sometimes when they even come to Islam, it's so difficult to deal with it. So I don't know how you guys do that.
So there's two things, right? One is, as you rightly pointed out, most Zulu people are obviously very close to their culture, right? Especially Zulu people, very, very attached to the culture. So one is when you're giving dawah, how do you explain to the person what Islam is? That's number one. And number two is when they do come into Islam, how do you get them to forget about all of the superstitions and all of the things? Because that's another very, very big problem that you have, right? So I'll talk about the first one more. This is just basically how I give dawah. When I'm giving dawah to people who are from the Zulu background, is I start off by talking about the similarities between the Zulu culture and between Islam. So there's a lot of similarities, the Zulu culture and Islam. You know, one is the prayer hut they call Hukas Tandas and Msamo and all of these things that they have in the culture. In Beleko they do like Aqiqa. So you explain to them these things that see so many similarities. So I've got about 5 or 6 similarities that I show. The Zulu people eat with the right hand, Sanda Sobutla, and these things, right? So I say, see so many similarities between you and between Islam. Whereas now, if you think about it, the religion of Islam, the Quran and Hadith came in Arabia. The Zulu people are from the Nguni people who came from West Africa. So how come we got all the same things, or a lot of the same things? Why you think we got a lot of the same things? So then the person will sit and think, okay, maybe because there's that, and say because there's a common God who sent prophets to everywhere in the world, and that's why there's commonalities between people, because prophets came to all different people, and the prophets taught the same core message. So then that like misconception is now removed. Then I say that you say Umvelingangi, we say Allah, the Kosa say Tiko, Tata Macholo, whatever it is, right? But we're talking about one God. That's a big misconception also. That we're talking, some people think like, I have my God and you have your God. Like a separate, you know, that's how some people think. So you've got to explain to them, right? But now the hard part is this, is now when you go to the culture. So they'll say, okay, fine, there's similarities. Okay, fine, you're worshipping the same God. But why must I leave my culture now and come to what you say why? Right? So you have to explain to them that, see, whenever God sent a messenger to the people practiced on it, but over time the message changed. The message got distorted a little bit, it got distorted here and there, right? And that's why the Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him came with a preserved Quran, that there can be no changes to it. So for the Zulu culture, I give them the example of the lobola. So the lobola now is 11 cows. But before the 1880s, it wasn't stipulated at 11 cows. When the British took over and a man by the name of Theophilus Shepstone came to the Zulus, he fixed it at 11 cows to create an expense for them so they'd have to go work in the mines. Right? And you can check that up historically. So, he did that, and up to today, that's still being practiced. So that shows that what? The culture can change. It can be changed. And if it changed from the original, we want to go back to the original. Right? Another example I give them is I say, see, the culture comes from your father, from his father or mother, going up, 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 right to the top, right to the first human being. Who's the first human being? Adam and Eve. Right? So I say, Adam and Eve, who did they used to worship? Did they have Amatlozi? Can they have Amatlozi? Can they have ancestors? They're the first human beings. I say, no, they can't have ancestors. Obviously, they're the first human beings. So how can they have ancestors? So who they used to worship? Only God, no Amatlozi. So that means that's the original culture, is that you worship only God, because that's what the first human beings would do. So when you show them, there's other examples as well, then they'll understand, okay, wait, some change took place, and now Islam is trying to bring you back to the original. So I tell them, for example, the Bantu people, which is like the bigger group of the Nguni people, when you look at their buildings and their civilizations in Mapungubwe, Tulamela, all of these places, you see that they were all monotheistic. They didn't have idols, they didn't worship any of these things, and they had a sense of like community, being good to people, taking care of people, and that is what Islam wants to bring you back to. So Islam is not taking you away from your culture, it's bringing you back to your original culture. So you are still a Zulu, but you're Muslim also. You can be a Kosa, you can be a Muslim. So that's how I try to give the dawah. Alhamdulillah, it does work to a great extent, but the issue is still that after the person accepts Islam, a lot of the practices are very hard to give up. So now, when they're doing the slaughter now, when the child is born, all of these things, the family wants to do it. These people feel hard to say, no, you can't come to my house and do it. It's very difficult. It's very, very challenging. So you have to be there for the person all the way. And even 5 to 10 years later, you still find like something, some wearing smadla or whatever. It can happen. It can happen. Because if you're not in a Muslim environment all the time, it's easy to get influenced. No matter if you know the truth, but it's easy. So we have to be understanding in these cases. Right? We can't just say, okay, now you think, go. No, you have to be understanding, be nice to the person, bring them back with kindness. Inshallah, by the time a few years go by, they'll come fully, completely into Islam. Right? And then their children definitely will be completely into Islam. So we have to be thinking long term. Don't chase the person away because they keep slipping back into those habits, because it does happen. So,
I wanted to ask, this question is based on now, as we were saying, the country is advancing so much, the world is advancing so much. So when we go out as a Muslim sister, we find that there are other Muslims who are different from us. So how do you go about knowing which is which, especially when it comes to new Muslims? How do you differentiate from this is what is invented by people and this is what is coming from Allah?
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so like you'll find differences amongst like the way maybe Indians will practice Islam and the way Zulus will practice Islam. You'll find certain differences, the way people in Nigeria. Now we must make a big distinction, right? One is between the core functions of Islam, Tawheed, Salah, Zakah. There is no difference. There is no real difference. Everyone agrees on the main things. But now maybe certain smaller things, how you must dress, a little bit here, a little bit leeway for some people. Women come to the masjid, in certain places they allow it, in certain places they don't allow it. So for reverts, this can become a very big issue, or like a stumbling block for them. Because they're saying, now which is the real Islam? That one, are they allowed to come, not allowed to come? How come some people are reading Salah like this, some people are reading like that? It's a very sensitive topic. So what I try to do is just not expose them to this for as far as possible, but as you said, eventually they're going to get exposed to it. And then you have to be explain in a way, you have to be able to explain in a nice way the reason why there are certain differences. And the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed to practice our Islam, the core is all the same, but little differences because Islam is for the entire world. So each person has to be allowed to take it, and it must, like water, must flow and fill what the space that's available there. So Islam doesn't come and bulldoze everyone's culture. No, it comes and certain things it changes, certain things we can't accept, but everything else it allows it. So it's part of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allows us different people to practice it slightly differently. It's actually a proof for Islam. So if you try and put it in that perspective, like that kind of thing. Okay. Now I think we'll go to the next topic because we don't want to run out of time. So this is the topic of feminism. Okay. It's a very sensitive topic, and it's one that many people don't. If you didn't sit and think about the Islamic perspective and the Western perspective properly, you may find yourself having some of the one view and you don't know it. Right? That's a fact. That's a fact. So let's try and examine it now from a very principled position. What are the main differences? Right? So in Islam, right, we view men and women as equal but different. Right? So they are complementary. So if you think in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the day and the night. The day and the night are different, but they're complementary. You can't say the night is better than the day or the day is better than the night. And then after speaking about the day and the night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى, male and female. So in the same way we understand that they are complementary to one another, they are equal to one another, but they are different. So think about a company, right? You got a company where you have people that are IT specialists and you have people that are specialists in finance. So they are doing the work and the IT people are running, they're running the computers and they're making sure everything's okay. So these people, no, you can't say the IT person is better than this person or this person is better than that person. They have different qualifications. They have different things that they're good at. So you're going to put the IT people to look at the computers and you're going to put the people in finance to deal with the finance. Or are you going to say, no, everyone is equal. Everyone is the IT people, they can go to finance if they want. Finance people can work the computers. Well, it makes sense. Will anyone do that? No one will do that because it's actually a form of oppression. Why is it a form of oppression? Because this person studied IT his whole life and now you're going and making him work on finances. It doesn't make sense. So similarly, when you do now, if you understood that analogy, right, that you have two sets of people, they are both equal, but they are both skilled in different things, so we should use them where their skills are, not try and equate them and make them the same. You understand that, right? So that's the basic. So that's one fundamental difference. There's two fundamental differences that generally I use to show between the Islamic perspective and the Western perspective. So the Western perspective is everyone's the same. Men and women are exactly the same, right? That's how they speak about it. And the Islamic perspective is they are equal, but they are different. Right? Understood that? So the next core and crucial difference in the Western perspective and the Islamic perspective is that from a Western perspective, what's the objective and what's the highest point in life is to be as rich as possible, materialism. So how you judge whether someone's successful? How rich they are or how successful they are in their business. That's the Western perspective. The Islamic perspective, how successful you are in the hereafter. Right? So these two key differences now, whether men and women are different or the same but equal, that's one difference. And how do you judge whether someone's equal or not? Is it through wealth and work, or is it through how your ranks in the hereafter? Right? So because of these two fundamental differences, now the whole ideology of feminism started to come about. Right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So just to give you an understanding of what I'm trying to say, if you take it to be that your job position or your money determines your value, then the only way for them to make a woman equal to men is to make them have the same positions in the workplace, right? And then to leave the family and go to the workplace because that's their judgment of the value of a person. Is you're a CEO, or you got a successful business, or you got this, or you got that. Now remember something, this is very important, it's only discussed in some history books, right? That one of the reasons why the West pushed feminism so much was because the West is run on pure capitalism, right? In capitalism, the people at the top, they get richer, and the people at the bottom have to work very hard and they just make a little bit of money, right? So the more people they are working at the bottom, the richer the rich can become without working at all. So to bring more people into the workforce, this ideology was there. We need to bring as many people into so make jobs seem glamorous. But if you just go back 300-400 years ago, Is a job a glamorous thing, or is it a way of getting your money so you can get food and eat and survive? Our Nabi Sallallahu taught us that that person who wakes up in the morning, he's safe, he has enough food for the day, he has clothes on his body, then it's as though he has the whole world. You don't need anything else, you know? So this understanding of wealth being the barometer or the bar led to all of these inconsistencies that we see, right? So remember that very, very important thing. Now you see the same thing with slavery also. So when they abolished slavery, the British abolished slavery, I think it was 1826 in the Cape, right? So they said they abolished slavery because it's wrong and we can't keep slaves and all of this here. But the real reason when you look into it why they abolished slavery was because if they, now when they were slaves, they had to give them food, they had to give them water, they had to give them shelter, they had to give them everything. When they released them as slaves, they didn't have to look after them, but those people still had to come and seek jobs by them. So it was a way again of increasing the monetary value. That was one of the core factors of the, because I mean these people were practicing slavery in a barbaric way for so many centuries, then in 1826 they all of a sudden became good people. It didn't work like that. So there was a motive behind it as well. A very similar concept applies here with feminism, right? Now, let's go a little bit further. So we should realize that most of these things, these movements started off with a good intention. So for example, even atheism in the Enlightenment, they saw Christianity is wrong, and they were right, Christianity is wrong, so they tried to fix it, but then they went too far on the other side. Feminism as well, the first wave of feminism, what were they fighting for? The right to own property, the right to vote, all things Islam gives women anyway. So they were actually right, the first wave of feminism, they were doing something good. They were saying, wait, you're not giving us our basic rights. We want the right of suffrage, they call it, the right to vote. We want these things, so give it to us, and they were 100% right. Because they were being deprived in the West of these basic things, which are obviously should be for every person. So it started off in a good place, but then eventually now it ended off in a place which is wrong, just like the Enlightenment and those movements. So that's another thing to remember also, is that if the proper Islamic values were in charge at that time, you wouldn't have even had first wave feminism to start off with. So when you talk about the history of feminism, you talk about different waves, meaning like a different ideology starts, then a different one, then a different one. There's 3 different waves they talk about, right? So the first wave was very good. It was needed. You understood why they were doing it. It was very, very, because they were being oppressed, and they fought against it. And the first wave, right, it started and it finished. Then in the 1900s now, the second wave started. Now the second wave is the one that we're going to talk about, and the one that affects all of us. The third wave, you don't have to worry about it, right? The second wave was the fight against the family and the home. So you had certain key people in feminism, Simone de Beauvoir, Germaine Greer, all of these ladies who were writing books. And in these books they were saying things like this. I'll give you some quotes. They were saying the home where a woman actually stays, it's a comfortable concentration camp. It's a comfortable concentration camp. That's what Simone de Beauvoir said about the home. And they spoke a lot about why a woman needs to get rid of a family, get rid of this having children, and find her own dreams. So that was the crux and the core of second wave feminism, right? Where there was this whole push, there were many books written, and they said, no, there's no such thing as gender roles, men are built for this, women are built for that, everyone's the same, they must all do the same thing, women don't have to take care of children, no such thing as that. They were against marriage, they were against children and everything, right? And so it's that sort of sentiment that has still carried on to today, right? Now we want to be able to explain to someone why that thing is wrong. We as Muslims understand the family structure is so important, having children is so important, so we know obviously that this is wrong. But certain people have not yet been able to understand the dangers of feminism completely. So we need to be able to explain it to them, right? So how I like to start off this discussion is by saying, see, Allah created you in a certain way, called the fitrah. You know what's the fitrah? Right. So the fitrah, the way you were created is, I'll give you an example. You're supposed to stay awake in the day and sleep in the night. Alright? But now some people, they have night shift jobs. So they have to stay awake in the night and sleep in the day. Now when they do that, they're doing it out of necessity, but when they do that, their body doesn't produce certain hormones when they're sleeping in the day because it's too bright. So they find lots of diseases that come to these people who work only in the night and sleep in the day. But why? Because they went against the way Allah created them. So you see the same thing happening with feminism, right? I'll give you a classic example. So in the early 2000s, they said, no, men and women are exactly the same, no gender segregation, work next to one another, have private meetings, do whatever you want, go on trips together, nothing, there's no such thing as you're going to fornicate or whatever it is, right? They started that in the 2000s. In 2015, what happened? Something called the Me Too movement. Anyone knows what's the Me Too movement? Me Too movement is where all the women started saying, me too, I was also, someone came and touched me, someone came and molested me, me too, me too, me too. They were all saying that throughout of Europe. It was a big thing. They were all saying, yes, one day I was at work, this person came in, he touched me, or he molested me, or he did this, or he did that. And then they realized, sure, maybe 60-70% of women were affected by this. And then what they began to do, in Netflix they said, okay, you're not allowed to look at a woman employee for more than 10 seconds. Or there's no more private meetings, you have to have gender segregation. So when they tried to go against the Islamic understanding, they saw how it backfired, and then they implemented all of these laws that fitted the Islamic thing basically. They said, no, a man and a woman can't have a private meeting. Goldman and Sachs, they did that, all of these places. Why? Because they realized that when you try and go against your fitrah, bad things are going to happen. So they themselves rebelled against their own movement. Because they said, no, we're getting oppressed, we're getting molested when we're doing this. We need some separation, we need some segregation. Understand? So that's one very, very important way of explaining it, right? The second one is that you see most of these people who wrote about feminism, who started the ideologies, right? At the end of their lives, I'll say every single one of them regretted it completely. So that same lady who was saying, women mustn't have children, her name is Germaine Greer. Women mustn't have children, it's oppression, this and that. At the end of her life, in her book, she wrote, I am having nightmares about the fact that I can't have children anymore. I'm dying to have children, but I can't, because she waited until she was too old and she did all of those things. Now she's saying, I have nightmares every night because I can't have children. So every single one of them, even the one who said about the comfortable concentration camps, she wrote a second book after that where she said, what we've done has had disastrous consequences and there's no way of rectifying it now. She regretted all of those things. But those books are not very, very famous because obviously they've not been publicized yet. But every single one of most of those women who started second wave feminism, by the time it came to the end, they all regretted it. Or they all wrote about how this thing is consuming us and destroying us. So because of that, they did a study in the West, right? It's called the Blanche and Oswald study, I think, where they interviewed over 100,000 women over a period of about 50 years or more than that. And they started from the time when women started to get so-called rights and being pushed into the workplace and all of these things. And they examined the happiness levels of women. And they found that the more these so-called rights were coming in, the unhappier women were getting. And if you Google the study, it's called The Paradox of Declining Female Happiness. Because they say, paradox is something that's hard to understand. They're saying, how come they're getting unhappier but we're giving them more rights? It's the opposite. It's not making sense to them. But to us it makes perfect sense because we know that women have certain roles, men have certain roles. If you're going to make women do the role of men and women at the same time, isn't that oppression? You're putting double on them. Understand that? So you find that even scientific studies go completely against feminism. It shows you that feminism has harmed women more than it has benefited women. Right? The second last point I want to make on this, it's very, very vital, right? When a person gets carried away with feminism, what happens is they begin to look down on the family structure. They begin to look down at women who stay at home. They begin to look down at women who don't have high-flying jobs. They begin to do all of these things, right? So they start like that, and they'll pick on the people who are here today, right? But now what happens when they have to hear about the wives of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, our mothers, who stayed at home most of the time, who didn't have high-flying jobs? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, are they going to look down at our own mothers because of their ideology? That's what happens indirectly when you absorb a foreign ideology and you come to Sharia now and you don't know what to do, you're confused, you're at a loss. So it has very, very dangerous ramifications and repercussions where you find that people who buy into this, eventually they fall into atheism. Some of them, not all of them. Allah protect us. So very, very, very important to remember that these foreign ideologies, women's rights and all of these things, You saw how they talk about it in Afghanistan, but when women are being killed in Gaza, then there's no women's rights then. Then no activist is jumping then. Why? Because those things, they only want it for themselves, it's not for us. We have our own way of doing things, right? Then, the last point to make about feminism is that you see the family structure from an Islamic perspective and even from a real world perspective is vital for the success of the child. So if you look in the US, for example, 70% of delinquents come from single parent homes, right? Where the child doesn't have the influence of both of his parents. So preserving the family structure is vital for many things in society. It's vital for the well-being of the child, it's vital for preventing crime, it's vital for all of these things. Feminism wants to come and destroy the family structure. So either it will say, no, the man and the woman must work and they must both look after the children, or they must send the children to a nanny, or it will say, don't have children. Why are you going to ruin your life by having children? That's the sort of ideology that's perpetuated. Or if you have a child, why must you get married in the first place? So they say the whole institution of marriage is an oppressive institution, Allah protect us, right? So it tries to undermine the entire family structure. When you undermine the family structure, what happens? Again, a whole host of negative connotations flow out from that. So I'll stop there. There's a lot more to discuss on this, but inshallah, if you'll have some more questions, you're asking some very good questions. So if you have questions, we will go with them.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zawadi Juma from Eswatini. You talked about feminism. The thing is, another thing that is a misconception about feminism is the way they say how feminism is. You understand? Because now people have put feminism as in how I dressed. I can be a boss to my husband or whatever. But I don't want to take the, I don't know if I'm saying if it's a blame or what, to take the blame to the woman. But even the men have played a huge role in us wanting to be feminists. You understand? A Muslim man is supposed to take care of us.
Yes.
We're not even supposed to go and look for jobs.
Yes.
A Muslim man, if he can't get, we're not saying we want millions, but just take care of me and my family. But we don't have those structures anymore. Hence, now we go out there, we are exposed to this world. That is, you see, when it comes to a woman, it's easy to manipulate a woman's mind. When you see things out there, even if we are all Muslims here, and we practice Islam, but when you get there out there, we see those things. I think we are not being protected by men at all. So now you can come and say feminism. Yes, we are feminists because now we need to wear pants and go look for food for our kids.
Very, very important. So I don't know if you know someone called Andrew Tate. So he says a lot of wrong things, right? There's no doubt about that. I don't know if you know him, right? But one thing he does say is that most of the problems in the world came about as a result of weak men. Yes. What that means is that the man was supposed to, as you said, protect the wife. The man was supposed to take care of his family. The man was, yes, okay, in some instances we understand where they came from, a difficult background, that's different. And then, we can't obviously expect everyone to win. But in general, it's as though men found feminism to be working. We don't have to work so hard now, but let's share things. Let's do this here, let's do that. So I don't agree with Andrew Tate on most things, but when he says that the root cause of most of these issues and what's happening to women is weak men, he's 100% right. He's 100% right. So in as much as we have to, as you said, conscientize, because now I'm talking to women, conscientize about feminism. When it comes to the man, when we're talking to only men, we have to explain to them what are your roles and rights and responsibilities. Yes, you have rights over a woman, but a woman also has rights over you. Yes. And you can't now play, okay, I'm not doing mine, but you must fulfill yours. What's that now? You know what I'm saying? That's furthering the oppression. So yes, very, very, very good point. And don't get me wrong, whenever we talk to men about this, we explain it from that perspective also. Because that is, it's going hand in hand, it's vital. Both hands you need to clap. You can't clap with one hand, you know what I'm saying? So that is a root cause, but also we should understand that in some cases, maybe it's difficult for some men to earn enough. So they're doing it out of necessity. But that's only a minority. Many men are doing it out of laziness, or out of not understanding the responsibility that they have. So that's a fact. Wait, I think
I want to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
You don't mind, right, sister? I'm asking a question, right? So now, the problem I have is now, my wife complains, I'm only going to work, I don't spend time with her, no quality time. Then I want to leave work and I'm staying at home. Then they say I'm useless, I can't find a job. Before we finish that, then I try my best to buy whatever I can, right? I buy a lot of things. She said, I buy today, so nice. Next day she said, what you bought? Nothing. I take her everywhere and go. But the next day she say, where you took me? Only that stupid place. Now you never take me anywhere. I'm asking, what must I do now? I'm in a problem. And if she don't work, I don't like to make her work because I'm very jealous. I'm on a pencil. I don't like it to work. So what am I supposed to do? You tell me.
I never say us women we are perfect in this. I'm not saying us women we are perfect in this. What I'm saying is that can this man of ours, because I know a lot of divorces, I know in Islam what makes me so, it makes me feel this pain is because a man can come at home and say talak, 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 and that is finished. And I say, now I'm supposed to take a role of taking care of my kids, my parents, my everything. But I'm supposed. I was taught that I grow up, I get married, my husband takes care of me, and I have to take care of my kid. Stay at home, look at the fix the house and everything. The man comes at home, everything is nice. But what I'm saying, our men out there, it's not so sweet. This feminism, even if we want to remove this feminism, it is so hard because even our men, they are not making us, we are hard women because now we have to be strong.
Yeah, no, very good. I agree with that, but I think we just, before we come here, one clarification also that's important is that a woman sometimes has to go and work, and Islam is not against that. If you're doing it the right way, it's fine. So sometimes that happens and it's okay. It doesn't mean the husband is necessarily failing, right? Sometimes the woman has to go out. It is difficult out there and we have to protect ourselves, but we must remember we're not in an Islamic state anymore. So we do have to protect ourselves. But what we are focusing on as the danger is not the mere fact of a woman going to work. That can happen, that's fine. We're not against that, right? We're talking about the ideology, the concept that we are the same. So if you, because of circumstances, you have to go to work, it could be your husband's fault, he should be taking care of you, but if he can't and you have to go, it doesn't mean you've gone into feminism now. No, it doesn't mean that. You can be working, you can be doing things, you can be running a whole company. It doesn't mean you became into feminism. You only came into feminism when you start falling into those two traps which we spoke about, which is when you say they are exactly the same, or you say that the judgment bar for things is your wealth and your position. Then you're falling into the concept now that will be dangerous for Islam. If you're working because you have to, if all of these things, don't now put yourself in the situation where you think, okay, if I don't stay at home, if I go and work now, I'm becoming a feminist. No, there's no such thing. There is no such thing as that. Right? So it's important, I think lucky we had this discussion. It's an important clarification.
I tell most of my friends, the
here,
wife can
I've been 3-4 times.
Okay, well, she can
There we
earn,
go,
but she
back
don't have
and
to
forth.
provide. She can earn, but she's not obligated to provide.
Exactly.
And once I tell my friends, once you make your wife provide half of what you are doing, you have no right to boss her and tell her what to do because now she's taking your responsibility. Most of my friends who have problems is because they know what the wife, it's a business contract very much. She's earning and she took your responsibility. I just find that personally, where
Let's just go to the
she has to pay half the expenses. Okay.
My name is Sister Hawa from Windhoek, Namibia.
Oh, mashallah.
I need to bring this up. I think, bear with me, I can't see very well, so I'm trying to see far and also read time. This was a topic I had to cover yesterday, but I'm thinking there is the intellectual dishonesty of discussion about the Muslim woman. It's untheoretically and ethically, and it should not apply. Because we are not here debating about feminism. We don't have something called feminism in Islam. It doesn't exist, it's not there. So we are not going to touch on it. We are not going even to align ourselves in the feeling and thought. And even the emotional balancing of issues of physicality and psychological or emotionality. We are not going to go there.
because that's not our line as Muslims. But when it comes to the brotherhood of Islam, when we speak, that unethical dishonesty that is always there. I hear my sister speaking of, yes, because I have right, yes, because I have to feed my kids, yes, I have to do this because we are forced to stand up from within to stand for ourselves. That also is not called feminism at all. That is a survival mode that we go in, that is adjusting where we have to be and so on. One other thing we have to bear in mind solidly, as Islam gives us rights. Yesterday I could not give you the whole lecture. So today, at least for me, also for my brothers to hear, when we talk about womanhood, when we talk about men, the unbalance that comes there. I asked you a question about the gender and what is a woman. I put the example of LGBTQ and what comes in line with that and so on. But what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling here, that we really have a problem with us Muslims as a collective, men and women, is the unethical a way of looking at it. Subjugation of saying, no, since you are a woman, you have to be lesser than this. Your duty will be in the kitchen. That's what the West attack us with. Muslim men are oppressive because they keep the woman in the kitchen, in the house. And Islam doesn't say that. The Quran doesn't give us that. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam give us all the right. Yes, in a conducive environment, we have to go and study, we have to strive, we have to be able to feed ourselves. Not also wait only for the men. What if your man is incapacitated? What if he is, all of these things, you have to be able to stand and be in the position of that. The other thing that I would want to say is like Islam speaks of Muslim women without understanding the constitution and the crucial debate about Muslim and the importance of concept that foreign Islam become like a jihad, and the jihad that is used there is the tool that they use is the woman, is the hijab, is a abaya, is a walk, is a speak, even with the loudness that I'm speaking, yeah? All of this become a problem because the aura. So you are subjugated, you are suppressed, you are oppressed, you are emotionally drained, and then you have to fight against your own husband, the shield, that's the king of your home. You have to stand up against this very person who's supposed to shield you, carry you, protect you, and support, and be able to feed you. And that become a conflict between the genders. Remember, I used gender and women, two different things, to be a woman and gender. So we are not going to go there because feminism takes us to genderism. It takes us to LGBTQ. It takes us to equality. It takes us to so many things. Now, if I put an example, please bear with me. If I take an example, like the West want us to believe that a man or a woman are both weight in ton of steel or ton of feathers. Which one are we, my sisters? We are a ton of feathers. Do you get it? We can be the same compound in a big bag of a ton. But what weight do we carry? We are feathers. The men are steel. The men are steel. So are we going to fight against the steel, or are we going to get where we are going? So when we have the issue of this balance, Islam put these things for us up front and very clear. The Quran is there that is stating where we have to be, where our roles is. But when our brothers are oppressing us and not looking at the scripture, the Quran, and the Sunnah, of course, where will we be? You are losing your women folk, you are losing your young girls. You are using your young girls in boarding schools that is exposed to lesbianism. We are losing our boys that is becoming gays in the name of the liberal world. May Allah protect us.
I was saying I had a lot of, I know for a while now, every question.
I think to put it out very perfectly, actually I was going to mention that it's not even about the issue, it is about the issue baby men not supporting the cause of this, but I think what Shimrana was explaining, the ideology that we women are starting to have to feel as if we need to change things around when Allah has put them clear, where we're comparing
and want equality. This is where it becomes a problem. Now we are finding situations where the women want to be imams, the women want to give khutbahs. It's not only just about going to work. That is a completely different thing. We need to address it and focus on that. It has nothing to do with the ideology that is creeping in, where we are also trying to look down on studying even Al-Muddin, because now we need to catch up with the so on of the TikToks and all that look like the women we see everywhere, and changing completely what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's position has put with us and them. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Ar-Rijalu Qawwamuna 'ala Nisa, we need to understand why it's put there, what's the protection. It goes further into the tafsir. So most of all, my worry is the ideology, where even we insist when the men come up with the laws of deen and say, we're not going to have, like people say, I'm not going to go to that area because they're not allowing women to go into the masjid. There's a reason sometimes why it's there. We need to also understand that comparison, this is where we are. We want to match up line by line. If he walks this way, I want to walk this way. If he can qirat, I want to qirat. If he can do this, I want to do this. Allah has put it clear. We must not try to change where Allah has placed us. We need to just stay in that line. That's it.
Just a comment. I think one thing we should take from all of this here is how fine the line is. You know what I'm saying? So our sister here was making a very valid point that weak men into women having to go out, and then you can't blame the woman because that's there. But at the same time, she wasn't trying to say that men and women must be equal. Obviously, she was not. I mean, it must be the same. She wasn't saying that. So when we're addressing these things, it's so easy to get the wrong impression. You know, like if I'm talking about one thing, you think automatically I'm talking against the other thing. But it's not the case, you know. So always, I think it's a lesson for us when we're addressing the situation, just clarify everything twice. So when for example, when I mentioned those things, I should have said, okay, but the men also need to do this here. So you get like where I'm coming from, right? Otherwise you can misunderstand where I'm coming from in this kind of thing. And similarly here, when the sister was saying that, even though we knew she wasn't saying men and women are equal, but just for the sake of the audience sometimes, you know, it's better to just put it on the table. So, because otherwise a lot of arguments start because of misunderstanding. You're not really understanding what the other person is saying.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm not a great da'i, right? I'm in training. But anyway, I think what's important here is that we've got some common sense and experience and a bit of knowledge. Now, the sister made some very, very pertinent points she raised, and I think it was it you also? You. And I think that this issue regarding the attitude of our men, and in this case, I think we're going to be very specific and say Muslim men need to be addressed and need to be changed. And this is something that, you know, it's useless our talking about this, you know, during a convention, some get together, some function, we talk about it and then it's over, nothing gets done. There needs to be change. And in my opinion, I think, well, look, when it comes to ulama, I'm not referring to our, beloved Maulana Ismail Musa here. He's an exception, right? But I think our ulama needs, I'm sorry to use this expression, it's colloquial, to catch a wake up. Yes. Right? This is where the call is. Because if you look at a Friday khutbah, think about how many people attend the khutbah. Okay, say we, in the world, I believe we at least 2 billion, right? They say 1.2 billion Muslims, 1.5, I believe there are 2 billion, right? Of the attending the khutbah, okay, of the how many males would there be? Let's see, okay, they say there are more females than males. So we'll say, okay, just a little less than 1 billion males. Of there are children who don't go to the mosque, right? So you say 500,000, right? 500 million people, males attend the masjid on a Friday, right? So khutbah. So there's a ready-made audience for the ulama. Here's the opportunity to teach, to explain, to guide, to reprimand the men for what they're doing. Not all men, there are exceptions. This is what my cudgel is. This is what I try to convey to the ulama. It's okay to talk about Sharia and go on with hadith and this and that and that. but bring it to the present situation. Relate it to the present situation. How a man is supposed to behave, how he's supposed to treat his family, how he's supposed to treat his wife, and what? Charity begins at home. This starts right at home, and it's not happening. Recently, last Wednesday, I belong to an organization called Friends, Upliftment Empowerment. We had this GBV. You must have heard. Who knows what GBV, by the way? Gender-based violence. So you know there's 16 days of activism, right? So we had an event to mark this occasion. And this same story about the men and the attitude. And what is said here is that our Muslim men, and mind you, the others outside, they're not stupid. They infiltrate and they get to know what's happening amongst the Muslims, right? And they pick on us. They criticize us. And this is where our men are also letting Islam down. Why? They got this idea of being dominant. I'm the boss. I'm earning. So I can tell you when to sit and when to stand, where to go, where not to go, what to say, what not to say. So, which is totally wrong. It's different. If you look at the Quran and what the Quran, it's so explicit. So when I say explicit, I mean it's so clear that you know what our role is and what attention we should be given as women and what respect and what rights we should be given. And is this happening? So basically, whatever you are talking about, I know exactly what it is. But it can't stop here with me knowing and you knowing. There's got to be something that has to be done about it. Because the world is standing and, you know, the idea around the world, because of media, is that the Muslim men, they oppress their women. And the thing is, they're not completely wrong. That's the sad part. They're not completely wrong. We can't stand up here and defend our men because the men are making nonsense. They are oppressing the women. Not all men, there are exceptions. Right? Okay, I'll give you an exception. My husband, alhamdulillah, is good to me. But along the way, when things went a little like this, I kind of pushed him around this way, you know, like this. Not like that. Although he's very broad-minded, he was abroad and what have you. But we also have a role to play. We also have to teach them in our own way. Are you doing that, or are you too intimidated? Are you too frightened? But my advice to you, do it lovingly. Do it with wisdom. Be smart. And how are you going to be smart? How? Equip yourself with knowledge. Before that even, one thing I must convey to you, to my sisters here, look after yourselves. Look after your bodies. Look after your mental, emotional, physical health. That's where it starts. And we're coming further, more fundamental, diet and exercise. Do it. You don't have to go to the gym. I do exercise on the musalla. I do exercise when I get into bed. You know, because I don't have time. I incorporate exercise and watch what you eat. Diet is so important. I also cheat, mind you, but not all the time. You got to know where to draw the line. You want to do dawah. How are you going to do dawah if you got aches and pains, you're uncomfortable, and you just, you know, you can't even concentrate reading, because you need to read. You need to have knowledge. So where your knowledge is also going to work again, leave dawah now. That's taking it at another level. With your own husband. Like me, I'm not going into sports. I'm taking too much time, Mulana. Sorry. Yeah. You know, I don't know, like male sports. Oh, I like sports. I like to move. I like to watch a bit of soccer and everything. But I sit with my husband and I make a few clever remarks. He's offside, I think. You know, and this guy, that was wrong. You know, the referee made a wrong decision here. I kind of act smart. Do things like that, and men will respect you. Hey, he even discusses certain things with me, which I never thought he would, because he was a professional soccer player. So, do little things like that. And then, my husband used to like to watch sports and the news. He loved those two I mean, he's a hard-working guy, right? He works very hard when he works. So now that's his relaxation. I tried to tell him over the years, man, you know what the news media, what it does to Muslims. They write us off. Media portrays Islam as a horrible, satanic religion even, right? So why go and watch all, yes, I have to keep in touch, I also watch. And then the soccer, the guy is kicking the ball from this end to that end, and you're sitting there and you're watching that thing and watching, like these little,
just the ladies.
Yeah. So I'm saying that, alhamdulillah, first of all I made dua. Second of all, like I tried in a nice, pleasant way without dominating him or scolding him, reprimanding him. Just the other day he tells me, you know what I realized? I realized this news is all nonsense. You know what? Why am I watching this news? It's not even true. It's so much of lies. And then he said, you know what? This football and soccer and all, they're advertising so much of alcohol. And then they got these women, with this badly dressed women and they jumping around. I just realized that I don't need so much of this in my life. But it took years, but I did it. So I'm saying that you can as well. And don't allow them to walk all over you. Don't take that frying pan and knock him on his head. You can't do that, you'll end up in jail. Would you do that? No. I know you're tempted sometimes, but my dear, I'm telling you, my beloved, just take it easy. Use a little bit of wisdom, right? But knowledge is very important. And I know you people are very enlightened, that is why you're sitting here. You're doing dawah, but where the dawah starts? At home. Husband, children, family, neighbor, friends, colleagues, okay? So, and then you go to the community, then you go to the broader community, that means outside your circle, and the society and the population. That's step by step. But be clear. Okay. Some people are a bit hungry and maybe diabetic, so I don't want to take up more of your time, but I just needed to convey this message because I'm a sister like you. I can identify with you, even sometimes not with my own experience, but I listen to a lot of other people's stories. Somebody put hands up there. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Layla from Namibia. I wanted to know, the masjid, does it facilitate ladies?
Yes, 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 absolutely. All right, so I won't take up more of your time now because I know you're getting peckish and there's goodies waiting for you there, your tea and juices, all right? So enjoy and be safe. It is South Africa, unfortunately, regarding crime, and then look after your belongings, your cell phone and what, and always go in groups wherever you're going. So, but enjoy. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
I see you're recording. Do we have access to this recording, or?
If you go onto the YouTube, IPCI, go onto YouTube, just type IPCI, the channel will come up, and then you can find the full recording there, inshallah. Okay. Jazakallah once again. Yeah. But it's a live, it's actually a live. So you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to see it now. So Jazakallah again for attending. Remember me in your du'as. Please let's remember to work together for da'wah, to work together for the sake of Islam. We all in it together. There's no divisions in terms of race or gender or any of these things. We're in it together for Islam. Right? We got one more comment. So it's just as other sister just put a hand up before that.
My name is from Zambia. I just wanted to ask or request, I'm also into dawah, and I just wanted to know if IPCI can also supplement literature to us, because our biggest challenge is literature.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is, after we finish now, I think one more sister wants to say something. I'll put you in touch with Brother Muhammad Khan, who took the tour. He's in charge of the literature. So yes, we do send literature, whatever the case is. Maybe you'll just have to pay for the courier, but other than that, yes, inshallah, the literature will be free. We will sort that out now. I think Sister
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is a sister from me who are similar to my sister there. We are a handful of Muslims in Namibia, not more than, I can't call it even 70,000, but yeah, we are there. we have an issue with the retention policy. Ahmed for prison outreaches, the women and staff as a coordinator of the Women Islamic Center, alhamdulillah, mashallah. The issue that we have is the retention policy. How do we retain our rebates and the support? Is there some aftercare, if one can put it that way? I would really want to be a mentor and supported in that.
Very, very important question. Just we'll end off on this. I know we need to eat now and that, but just one is very important. So we went to Bahrain recently, and there was a conference there, and there were dawah organizations from all over the world. So they explained to us some of their river care, and inshallah they have like very good ideas that I feel we also here need to implement. See, because at the moment what generally happens, I don't know about in Namibia and other countries, but the person accepts Islam, you send him to a river class, he or she to a river class, they go, but sometimes they miss, they miss, and then they drift off when they go back to their family, and then I would say 50% of reverts go back. That's in South Africa, that's the case, at a very minimum. So where I think our issue is that we say, okay, you take Shahada and then revert classes. But there's a crucial step in between or with that, which is mentoring. To have a mentor and mentee system, right? One that's online and one that is in person. So what we're trying to do now is when someone accepts Islam, give him a mentor. Obviously, if it's a lady, try to make it a lady, who will check on him every day on WhatsApp, check on her, they'll send her some reminders, and then link her up with someone in her area. And this person must see to them for at least 6 months, maybe up to a year. So WhatsApp mentoring one person, if you have a da'i, someone's giving the dawah, then you also have to have what we call a mentor. So you have da'is and you have mentors. One mentor can see to about 10 to 15 reverts at a time because you're just sending them a message, checking on them once every day. So again, I don't think it's a foolproof solution, but if we add mentoring to the revert classes and we try and create more of a community, but I'm not sure how to do that, it's very difficult. That's one thing, but with the mentorship, it's something we can do. And we can make a plan to do that. And I think it really increases the number of, as you said, retention policy. It increases our retention percentage quite a bit with the mentorship. It's not going to take it to 100, but it's going to increase it significantly. We saw that in Bahrain with the way they're doing it. So just one more thing on that, the way they would do it also is they would monitor every revert. So they have a syllabus, let's say 20 lessons that you can do online. So every revert, you click on his name on the website, it will show you, okay, he's on lesson 5 at the moment, and his mentor has this to say about him. He's on lesson 6 at the moment, this is the last time his mentor. So that sort of software, it takes money and they have probably government backing, but it's not impossible to do. And with that sort of thing, you keep in track of everyone, at what point they're in, where they need help. You can see someone hasn't moved on now for the last 2 months, still stuck on the same lesson. You know you've got to do something. But that sort of software, so we have to embrace technology. And that's really, really going to help us to spread information and keep people together online. So inshallah.
Because Maulana said something. AI.
Yes.
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
What is the take on the dawah?
So the thing about ChatGPT at the moment is it's still unrefined. Okay, we can use it. So I know so ChatGPT is one type of AI that's available, right? You got Google has its own one, Meta has its own one, and they've created an AI that does the basic dawah, meaning if a revert, the common questions it can answer and this and that. But the problem with almost all AI on the market today is it's unrefined, meaning it has this tendency to want to answer your question, and so sometimes it will fabricate answers for that question. And I've got lots of examples like that. So because of that, I think it's very promising for the future. But for now, if we're going to jump into it and use that, we're not sure exactly where it's going to go. Yeah, so when it becomes refined, I think it'll be very powerful for dawah. But right now, I think we should just be a bit cautious from the things I've seen with ChatGPT and other AIs. It just needs a bit of refining. Allahu A'lam. So, sisters, we have to end now. Because I think some of the sisters want to eat and everything. Please make me laugh. I couldn't listen to all of you all. I would have liked for each and every one of you all to speak, but there's so many of you all. But I did learn a lot, alhamdulillah, and I hope you also learned a lot. I hope you remember being your du'as and you remain firmly in dawah for the rest of your life, inshallah. And Allah make it easy for all of us. Allah accept from all of us. Allah help our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Syria, and Israel. And inshallah, Islam will one day go again to the top way it's supposed to be.
إلهي أنت الحليم العليم العظيم الرحيم السميع البصير. الله إلهي أنت الحميد المجيد الرشيد الشهيد اللطيف